Welcome. Today we'll be talking about a great saint in the Vaishnava tradition known as Raghunatha Dasa Goswami. I'm just going to wait a few moments for our live audience to come in, but you can skip ahead a few seconds and join in the talk. If you do like what you hear here, you can always share it with friends or store it as a useful reference. Very nice to be with you. Mohini, Saka, issuing forth a massive Hari Bol to the gathered brothers and sisters. In your mind's eye you can see thousands of them, I'm sure. We've got Mark. Now, one thing I must say, if you do come in, please let me know that you're there. It's always nice. Richard Rupanuga and Pete. Yeah, some people say to me, well, I didn't make myself known, but I was there watching. It's always nice for me because you should have a little bit of sympathy for me. I'm just sitting all alone in my bedroom, staring at a camera and trying to connect with you. So if I know that you're there and you say something to let me know that you're there, then that's very, very nice. That's good. So we have had, over the past few weeks, we've had a bucket load of philosophy. And knowing that you're all philosophical fans, I have delivered about, 15 or 16 sessions on philosophy. Tonight I thought we'd vary it a little bit because we are coming into the season of summer festivals, believe it or not. And yesterday I had a wonderful festival known as the Chittadahi Utsav, or to give it its proper name, the Panihati Chittadahi Utsav. It's a festival of sweet rice, and very nice festival it was too. Took place at the Haveli at the Manor, and everybody's familiar with the should we say the TV show where they bake cakes and an expert tastes the cakes to see what they're like. Well, I was the so-called one of the three so-called experts yesterday, tasting up to 58 varieties of sweet rice. It's a tough job, but someone has to do it. Sweet rice which had been placed in beautiful earthen pots that you would get from a garden centre, terracotta pots, which had been painted in different designs. Krishna, cows, peacocks, flowers, bees, different themed. So I had to do that as well as give a talk. So I thought that I would reproduce the talk from yesterday, seeing as it seemed to go down well. So I hope you don't mind. So we live in a culture, as Vaishnavas, we live in a culture. Can you all hear okay? We live in a culture where we're not afraid to be followers of leaders. We're not afraid to say that someone is better than us, someone is more intelligent than us, wiser than us, and that we can learn something from that person by listening to them or imbibing their qualities. We don't consider that a blow to our pride. Rather, we consider that to be contributing to our humility, which will contribute to our success. In a materialistic society, you have people who all want to be the best at something, and sometimes it's very difficult for them to acknowledge the superior quality of another. Except if you're a student and you're with a recognized master from whom you can learn something. So, as is the chef to the master chef, as is the soldier to his commanding officer, as is the RAF cadet to his flight training officer, as is the wrestler to his supreme champion, as is the martial arts practitioner to his sensei. So we have this relationship between a person who wants to study Krishna Bhakti and learn in two ways. One is to learn from what is being taught, and the other is to learn from what has been caught by the person, taught and caught. Caught means that I have understood this teaching of Krishna Bhakti and I'm acting on it, and my spiritual qualities, my saintly qualities, have started to appear. So just by living for a short time in the proximity to a saint, we can make great strides forward in our life. And just by hearing about such great saints, like this morning I was reading about King Kulashekar, who was a real historical king hundreds of years ago, but was nonetheless a Vaishnava and a devotee, and wrote beautiful songs and poetry. Just to be in his company would make people think of their spiritual nature. So we have a whole array of saints for us to study and contemplate and try to learn from their behavior, how we ourselves can behave. So the saint for today is Srila Raghunatha Dasa Goswami. And there's a relationship between the Sweet Rice Festival and Raghunatha Dasa Goswami, which we will hear. So he was born, some say in the 1480s, some say in the 1490s. There's a little disparity of opinion there. But he was born in a region of Bengal, on the eastern side of India, where the Ganges flows into the ocean. So these days that place would be known as Calcutta. The British took what was a small village at that time called Kaligata. Kali means a particularly ferocious form of Durga, who is worshipped to remove all obstacles on the path of success. So she is called Kalima, or Kalima. She has a string of skulls. Her tongue is extended, Kalima. And so the place where is a bathing place is known as a ghat. So Kalighat was the name of this small village. And Kalighat became eventually, when the British were going in and out of there with their boats, their ships, became known as Calcutta. So Kaligata became Calcutta. Now, the Ganges is one river, and some tributaries flow into the Ganges River. But at the end of the Ganges, there's what is known as distributaries, where the Ganges distributes itself in different directions. So we have 20 different rivers that come from the Ganges in that area. And one of them, very famously flowing through Calcutta, is known as the Hooghly. And this Hooghly River, if you go up it, just some distance from the city centre, the city is now expanded to gobble up all these different regions, but one place was known as Saptagram, and this is where Raghunatha Dasa Goswami was born. And it's just couple of miles down the road. I've been there, from Kardaha. And Kardaha was where Nityananda Prabhu settled after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Puri, Kardaha. And just around the corner from there is a place known as Panihati, which was by the river, where there was a big banyan tree. So Raghunatha Das Goswami, he was the only son of his parents. And his father was known as Govardhan Majumdar. He was a devotee, but he was successful, and he was, shall we say, a little more materialistic than his son was. And these were, in those days, the landlords, they had not only houses as landlords do today, but they had land. In fact, they had whole villages, and a tithe from these villages would be paid to the landlord, and the landlord had to pay the king. That was the system. So the tax came from all of these farmers to the zamindar. Zamindar means the Bengali landlord. Now, Govardhan, who was the landlord, he was a multi-millionaire in today's terms. He had a brother called Hiranya. Hiranya had no children. Govardhan had only one son, and that was Raghunath. But unfortunately for his father, Raghunath was interested in spiritual things and not so much interested in material things. It's a little bit like, to make a European comparison, it's a little bit like St. Francis of Assisi. His father was a very wealthy man, cloth dealer. Francis at one point was a man about town. He was a soldier. And then he had an experience and he became less and less interested in the things of this world. So when this happens in a family, the general tendency is that the parents despair and they do what they can to make their children, well, we do anyway as parents, don't we? We make our children as successful as they can be. But when you're very wealthy, you buy them things, you see. If you want their love, you buy them a motorbike, or you buy them their first car and driving lessons, and you buy them a house, and you buy all kinds of things. You can't guarantee their love, of course, but you try. So Raghunath was on the receiving end of a lot of things. Whatever the early 1500s equivalent of a motorbike was, I'm not sure. But he wanted to join Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He had a guru. His guru was known as Balaram Acharya. Well, the Balaram Acharya was one, and Yadunandan Acharya was another. And between them, they introduced him to Haridas Thakur. Now, Haridas Thakur is known as the Nam Acharya. He was from a Muslim family, but his chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra was so incredibly fixed and focused, and he was in obviously such delight when he's chanting that everyone could see that saintliness, devotional practice, or bhakti equals happiness on another level completely. And when you saw this in a person, you would feel that if I could have some of this happiness too, that would be wonderful. So Raghunath saw this in Haridas Thakur, and he was thinking, how do I get this? Well, Haridas said, you have to go and see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If you could actually sit with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, your life would change completely. Imagine, only 500 years ago, if we could sit in the company of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, your life, my life, would change completely. This is what Raghunath wanted. He left home. But his father had a lot of spies. Imagine the richest man. It's always the richest man's son who gets kidnapped, isn't it? So they develop a network of spies. They brought him back. He ran away. They brought him back. But eventually Nityananda himself, who was known, of course, to be the best friend and compatriot of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was already in Puri by this time, Jagannath Puri. Raghunatha wanted to go south, but before he did that, I must meet Nityananda Prabhu. So he came into Panihati, not too far from his home in Saptagram. You can still go to these places today. It's a beautiful place, actually, Panihati. There's a big banyan tree. You can sit under the same banyan tree that Nityananda Prabhu sat under. When you sit under a banyan tree, it can be a very hot day. When you sit under the banyan tree, it's many degrees cooler. Very wonderful place to sit. And if you have cold water under a banyan tree, then you're very comfortable. So Nityananda Prabhu was sitting directly by the trunk of the tree, and hundreds of Brahmins and sadhus were gathered around him, listening to him talk about the holy name of Krishna. So Raghunatha was standing on the edges, and he didn't know how Nityananda had seen him, but Nityananda gestured to him and he said, "Oh," he said, "a thief has entered our company. Come here, thief, I will punish you." So Raghunatha was very hesitant, and he didn't want to come forward in front of all the sadhus and holy men. He didn't feel himself to be very holy at all. He was feeling very small. "Thief, come here," said Nityananda. Now Nityananda is even more merciful than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so how could he be so strong with the young lad? And he was only young, he was very nervous. He came forward, he said, "Bow down." He bowed down. And Nityananda took his right foot and placed it upon his back. And of course all the devotees went wild. This was a gesture of mercy. Raghunatha burst into tears, and Nityananda raised him up and said, "My son, I call you a thief because you want to have the company of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but you have to pay the price. If you want his company, my Lord's company, then you must pay the price." "What is the price, sir?" He said, "The price is that you must use your wealth and transfer your wealth into service." "And the service is what, sir? What shall I do for you?" He said, "Well, the service I want you to do, you see all these hungry Brahmins, these thirsty Brahmins, it's a hot day. I want you to bring some ice-cold sweet rice." I don't know, maybe he didn't say ice-cold. It's been very hot, so I'm elaborating, using my artistic license. He said, "I want some cold sweet rice for these men. Bring them in earthen pots." And so he was sent away to use his resources from his father to engage in direct service to the Vaishnavas. Now Vaishnava Seva, Krishna says in the Adi Purana, which is a book, the Adi Purana, the original Purana, not the Bhagavad Purana, but another one. Krishna says that service to the Vaishnavas is truly service to me if you serve the devotees. So, well, he was very happy to hear this, and therefore he went away and made all the preparations. Different shopkeepers approached him because they'd heard what the task was. They said, "Well, I've got pots, I've got sugar, I've got milk, I've got cream, I've got bananas." So the command was to make savory and sweet. And the way you make sweet rice, of course, is boiling the rice, flat rice, chipped rice, and you soak it in yogurt and add black pepper, or you soak it in sweetened condensed milk and add bananas and different things. So hundreds of pots later, there was a grand festival. This festival was known as obviously the Chipped Rice Festival. This festival has been going on for the last 500 years. It's a little bit like the tomato festival they have in Italy, where they throw the tomatoes at each other. There's such a profusion of wealth. Anyway, we don't throw the sweet rice, but it's respected and honoured. But so many Brahmins turned up for this festival that Raghunatha had to keep making more. And there were so many that some of them were standing not under the banyan tree, but they were standing in the river to keep cool, to receive their portion. But at one point, it was said that the festival was so pleasing and the hearts of the devotees were so pure that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, even though he was in Puri, was attracted to come. And he came, and he was Nityananda and Advaita were pushing sweet rice, morsels of sweet rice into his mouth. And those who were pure could see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And those who were not pure enough, all they saw was Advaita and Nityananda pushing sweet rice into the air. I couldn't see anything else. So this was the turning point for Nityananda. Remember last week or the week before, we talked about turning points. And I said the turning point is like, the first stage is being convinced that a boat will take you over the river, to use a Bengali example. That the boat will take you over the river, that there's no leaks in the boat, and that you have a qualified boatman. But the commitment is to step into the boat, and even though it rocks, to stay on the boat. So there's a difference between knowing that something will be good for you and wanting to do it and actually doing it. It could be a commitment of some kind, it could be anything. But in our line, in the line of bhakti, there are many commitments, many turning points beyond which we lead a more dignified, purified life more dedicated and committed. And so this was Raghunatha Das Goswami. This was his turning point. He'd been brought from the outside into the interior. He'd gone from having wealth to putting it into practice and service. And he'd gone from wanting to be in the company of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to being irreconcilably decided on going. But still, he didn't go. He listened to his parents. They said, please stay, we're old. They're trying every trick. Besides, you're not married yet. So they got him married to the most beautiful girl you can imagine. He himself was a multi-millionaire, Raghunatha, because of his father. And which beautiful girl would not want to marry a multi-millionaire? But still, that wasn't enough to keep him. And he ran away. Shortly thereafter, and he came to Jagannath Puri from Saptagram, where he was living. It's about 600 miles, and you walk and walk and walk. It takes many weeks to walk 600 miles. So he finally reaches, and this is his turning point. And from then on, he's in Puri. He travels secretly. When he goes there, he lives in extreme humility. And therefore, Raghunatha Das Goswami is held up as being a wonderful example of renunciation or vairagya. Now, renunciation or giving something up does not in itself display that a person has become Krishna conscious. You may be Krishna conscious and you may be externally very much attached, like Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Pundarik Vidyanidhi was a very wealthy man, and therefore people didn't come to him for spiritual guidance. They said, why should I go to him? But then when he was listening to some Bhagavatam some kata. He was sitting on silk cushions, surrounded by a servant fanning him, someone else feeding him. The life of a rich man. But when someone was reading the Bhagavatam to him, he became ecstatic. Tears came from his eyes and he became overcome. And therefore people understood his true nature. One may become renounced, may give up many, many things, but the heart may become hard. And for Krishna to steal one's heart, the heart has to be soft like butter, not hard. So therefore we try to not become hard-hearted in our detachment from the material world. Now, it is a fact that if one begins to love Krishna, then one automatically begins to be a separatist when it comes to material things. Prabhupada said it's like a seesaw, a child's seesaw. He says, "Do you know this? What is it called?" He said, "Seesaw, Prabhupada." "Yes, seesaw. One end is going up, the other end is going down. This end is going up, the other end is going down." He said, so when one loves Krishna, he loves other things less. Doesn't mean you love your family less, but it means that there is a greater reason for you to love them and love others. We love others in a different way. But things we don't love because they cannot give us much. So he was living very simply in extreme humility. He had minimal food, he was sleeping outdoors, and he was practicing Krishna consciousness. This is in about 1517. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very happy with him. And he said, well, I'm a sannyasi, I can't initiate you, but I will give you to Swarup Damodar Goswami. And Swarup Damodar, he looked after him. And Raghunath became known as Swarup Raghunath, Swarup's Raghunath. Lord Chaitanya instructed him personally, as well as Swarup Damodar. But because this was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time for going to Vrindavan and coming back, his education was given by Swarup Damodar and he stayed in Puri. During this time, Raghunath was his austerities became legendary. He was, one time he was just begging outside the temple, outside the big Jagannath Puri temple, where they feed 10,000 people every day, 10,000 people. But it comes out as opulent Mahaprasadam. So he was standing there, he was begging, and then he thought, this is the profession of a prostitute, to stand outside a temple looking for customers. He said, I shouldn't be like this. So he went around the back of the temple. In the back of the temple, other scraps of prasadam came out. So it was all Jagannath prasadam. Eventually he went to another gate where the shopkeepers used to throw food that had gone to waste, and rice that was old, and fruit that was old, and vegetables that were old. And so this is what he took. And he would wash off the green mold, and he would have his dinner. One time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to visit him. He said, I hear you've been feasting. You've been feasting without me. This is not good. And he snatched some rice from him. Just as Krishna snatches rice from Sudama Brahman. Sudama came to see Krishna with some rice, and Krishna said, you brought me a feast. Give me some. And just as Rukmini held back Krishna's hands from Sudama's rice, so Swarup Damodar held back Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's hand from the rice. He said, my lord, I think this is not, it's not fit. Even the animals don't eat this. Probably better that you don't. Let Raghunath eat like this if he wishes. So as a result of his great satisfaction with the progress of Raghunatha Das Goswami, who, by this time, was chanting, get this, chanting Hare Krishna for 22 and a half hours every day. 22 and a half hours japa. Then he would have some buttermilk. Perhaps this is later when he went to Vrindavan. And then he would sleep a little. Such an amazing dedication. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him, as a gift, a stone from Govardhan Hill, a Govardhan Srila, it was about this big, and a string of beads this size, but not tulsi beads. There's one string of like beans. They're seeds called gunja seeds, and they're half red and half black, and they are said to represent Srimati Radharani, and of course the Govardhan stone represents Krishna. So when you worship them both together, this is Radha Krishna. So you can still see them today. They are in the Radha Gokulananda temple in Vrindavan, on the altar, and anyone can go and see them. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had this Govardhan stone, and he had, in his ecstasy, he'd put his head to it, and he'd cried tears on the stone, and this is the stone that he gave to Raghunatha Das. Perhaps my timeline is getting a bit mixed up here, but at some point he gave it to him. So Raghunath is directed by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to become internal, to be more contemplative. And of course Nityananda Prabhu was directed to be the preacher, the missionary. Raghunath went in the other direction to be the contemplative. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu passes away in 1534, and Raghunath stays in Puri for some time. And all this time, of course, he's living as a disciple of Swarup Damodar. And Swarup Damodar is keeping a diary, or a Kodacha, as it's called. And in this diary, he's writing all about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's intimate pastimes in the last portion of his life, the 18 years he spent in Puri. What happened, what he said, what he taught. And then he passes all this on to Raghunath Das. Raghunath goes to Vrindavan, and he's so unhappy that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has left the world. Imagine, he was with him for years. He's so unhappy. He wants to commit suicide. He's feeling there's nothing. What is there left for me in this world now? I have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who's gone. But he goes to Vrindavan, and Rupa and Sanatana Goswami are there. And Rupa Goswami says, well, don't do that. You're the only one who knows about Lord Chaitanya. We've been here in Vrindavan. He sent us here to reclaim the holy places, to write books and to teach. But that meant we couldn't be with him. You're the only one who knows what happened. So why don't you just explain to us? Don't kill yourself. Be with us. Teach us. So they taught him, and he recounted the stories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to them. Eventually, of course, he meets the young Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and these diaries and Raghunath's teachings to Krishnadas Kaviraj go on to become the Antyalila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the biography and the teachings of Chaitanya in 3 volumes. The Adi Lila, the beginning, the Madhya Lila, the middle, and the Antya Lila, the end. And so the Antya Lila is made up of stories from Raghunatha Das and Srila Damodar's diaries, taught to Krishnadas Kaviraj. So now Raghunatha Das goes into his extreme austerity. He's just eating not even rice, he's just having a few drops of buttermilk every day. Deep, deep meditation on Radha Krishna Lila. But he does write and he does teach others, and he writes books in which he describes the beautiful pastimes of Radha Krishna in the spiritual world. He writes songs and poetry. He writes a book known as Stavavali. Stavavali is a collection of other smaller booklets, one of which is Manashiksha, Instructions to the Mind, just 11 verses, in which Raghunath teaches his own mind. My dear mind, don't become interested in fame. Fame is no better than the urine of a donkey. Stay away from fame. My dear mind, please chant the holy name of Krishna. Don't think of food. Think of the holy name of Krishna, which is like Shrikant with saffron and honey. He describes this beautiful flavor of the holy name of Krishna. So in these verses, another book was the Vilap Kusumanjali. Another book was the I forget. No, it's gone. Senior Moment. So he settled in Vrindavan, and he becomes one of the most respected examples of renunciation in the entire bhakti tradition. And eventually he dies a very skinny old man at the age of 86, but he is the head of the tradition, and many, many people, they follow him. One thing we didn't say was that he liked to live on the edge of Govardhan. The edge of Govardhan is a little jungle at the northern end of Govardhan. Now it's not a jungle, but it was a jungle. Govardhan was mostly set in jungle. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had gone there, and he had found a small pond, which he declared was the pond of Radha Kund, Radha's pond. And so Raghunath Das Goswami went there, and on the side of this small pond he would chant. And someone who happened to be passing by, they saw a tiger come to get water from this pond, completely oblivious to the presence of Raghunath. And this person commented, he said, this sadhu is so absorbed in the names of Krishna that Krishna himself is protecting this sadhu from the hungry tiger. How did I know that the tiger was hungry? They usually are. A human being they'll have, if they can. One man was on his way to the Bhadrakashram, I believe it was, high in the Himalayas. And he had a dream that night, just before he left the Vrindavan region, or when he was on his way. And the dream said that you must go and help a great saint excavate the pond of Radha. So the extremely wealthy man, he went there and he said, okay, what shall I do? And Raghunath Das Goswami directed him how he would dig the pond and make stone steps going down to the pond. Firstly, how he would excavate the pond so that it was much bigger. The whole point was, you won't perhaps understand this at first, but if there's a small pond on this side of a jungle where a great saint is living, then the great saint wants to teach people about Krishna. It makes sense that he should try to make the pond more useful so that people will come to that place on pilgrimage. And now you might think that a person wanted less people to be living there, but he wanted more people to be living there. That's why Rupa Goswami says, basically, who is there that wouldn't go to Radhakund? Of course, now there's too many people living there. So these holy places, they get, like a river, they get silted up. Too much sand and debris goes there in the form of mundane people. In the 1920s, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur went there and he said, I don't see any spiritual people here at all. Anyway, 400 years, 500 years before that, it was time to excavate, so they excavated. The original pond is still marked with a little boundary wall at the bottom of the big lake, and occasionally they empty that lake. The whole of Radhakund becomes emptied, and what is this place called? Kunjan Kund. The whole lake is emptied and it's cleaned and then refilled with water. Anyway, so that pond, Radhakund, was dug, making it into a lake, and then the lake on the other side, Shamakund, was dug, and then buildings for places where the sadhus could live and be protected. And Raghunatha Das Goswami lived there, and you can still go to the place where he lived. You can go to the place where the Chaitanya Charitamrita was written by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, all on the banks of Radhakund. And very nice place to spend some time. So, what do we learn from this? Well, we can learn again about a turning point in our life, about deepening our commitment, that eventually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message, as Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. You've come to teach these two things, knowledge and renunciation. When you have knowledge, you naturally become renounced, because who would stay attached to something that was harming them? So the idea here is that there will be a natural renunciation take place, but it should be accompanied by vidya, or knowledge. So if you know Krishna, you become less interested in the world, because the world is the prakriti of Krishna. It's the energy of Krishna. It's real, but it's temporary. The manifestations that you see in the world around you are not for you. They're just a mirage. If you think that you can be happy here, then you'll be disappointed. Ultimately, you'll be disappointed. That's the sad news. The good news is that correspondingly, you'll be gaining delight by experiencing Krishna. And factually speaking, no one can become detached artificially. The vairagya that we practice is so that we don't become further entangled. But genuine vairagya only comes at the point when we know Krishna. So, thank you very much for your kind listening. This is Raghunatha Das Goswami. Hare Krishna. Thank you. So, hoping you're well, I would like to greet you all. Those of you who came in a little bit later, you can catch up. And I'll take any questions that you have. Where are we? Let's go back to the beginning. Basaka, are you still chanting Hari Hari Bol? Jeremy, Hare Krishna. Well, Jeremy's been busy because he's had a... Can I tell him?